Single dad helped an old man load his truck. Then the old man introduced his daughter. Could a simple act of kindness lead to an unexpected introduction? And what might happen when the old man introduces his daughter? Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. We're so glad you're here to enjoy another heartfelt story filled with unexpected moments and meaningful connections. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Thank you so much for being here, watching, and supporting the channel. Your support means everything to us. Now, we'd love to hear from you. What would you do if helping a stranger led to an unexpected introduction like this? With that in mind, let's step into the beginning of this intriguing story and discover how it all started. The crate slipped from the old man's arms just as Ethan's phone began ringing again. "Dad, pickup ends in 20 minutes, Lily said when he answered. "I know, sweetheart. Are you close?" Ethan looked past the gas station toward the highway, where late sunlight flashed across his dented pickup. Beside the curb, an elderly man wrestled a wooden crate toward the rusted bed of an old Ford truck. The box scraped over gravel with a dry, splintering groan. Ethan checked the dashboard clock. The elementary school was 12 miles away, traffic was thickening, and Lily hated being the last child waiting beneath the fluorescent lights. Then the old man's knee buckled. Ethan was out of his truck before the crate struck the ground. "Easy," he said, catching one corner. "I've got it." The man straightened slowly. He had silver hair, a sun-darkened face, and a faded work shirt carrying the clean scent of cedar. "You've got somewhere to be. So do those crates." Ethan ended the call only after promising Lily he was coming. Heat rose from the pavement through his worn boots. A diesel engine rattled near the pumps, and somewhere inside the station, a bell chimed whenever the glass door opened. 6 more crates stood beside the old Ford, each built from rough pine and heavy enough to bow the handcart beneath them. "What's in these?" Ethan asked. "Orchard equipment. Feels like you packed the orchard, too." The old man gave a quiet laugh. "Name's Walter." "Ethan. You always stop for strangers, Ethan?" Ethan crouched, tested the next crate's balance, and lifted with his legs. His blue mechanic's shirt pulled tight across his shoulders. Dark grease remained beneath his fingernails despite the fresh scrub marks around them. Only the ones losing arguments with lumber. They loaded the next 3 without wasting words. Walter tried to take the heavier end of the 4th, but Ethan shifted his grip. "Steer it. I can carry my share. Then carry the part that keeps us both standing." Walter studied him for half a second, then guided the crate into place. By the final load, sweat had darkened Ethan's collar. A sharp edge opened an old callus across his palm. He closed his hand around it, wiped the thin red line against his work pants, and secured the tailgate with a frayed rope he found behind the cab. "That knot won't hold past the first hard turn," Ethan said. From his own truck, he brought back a ratchet strap and tightened it until the crate stopped shifting. Walter reached for his wallet. "Let me pay you." "No, you're late because of me." Ethan glanced at Lily's handmade bracelet around his wrist, its blue beads pressed against the swollen muscles of his hand. "Then I'd better stop talking." Walter held out 2 folded bills. Ethan stepped back. "Buy a better strap." "And yours?" Walter asked, looking at the one now cinched across his cargo. Ethan shut the tailgate. "I'll manage." The words were quiet, but Walter heard what they cost. Ethan had risked being late for the person who mattered most, surrendered equipment he needed, and asked for neither praise nor payment. Walter's gaze settled on Ethan's cracked knuckles, the stitched name above his shirt pocket, and the dignity with which he climbed into a truck older than some of the students waiting at Lily's school. "Ethan," Walter called before the engine turned over. He tore a small feed store receipt from his pocket, wrote an address on the back, and held it through the open window. "Come by my farm tomorrow evening. Let an old man thank you properly." Ethan accepted the paper only because refusing again would make Walter chase him. Then he drove toward Lily, leaving the smell of cedar and hot asphalt behind. In the mirror, Walter remained beside the loaded truck, watching him go as though those calloused hands had answered a question Ethan did not yet know had been asked. The evening sun lay copper across the pasture, warming the cedar fence while cicadas rattled in the tall grass. Somewhere behind the barn, an old engine coughed twice and settled into silence. Ethan guided his pickup along the gravel drive with Lily beside him, the tires popping loose stones against the wheel wells. Walter waited on the farmhouse porch, silver hair bright beneath the lowering sun, 2 glasses of lemonade sweating on the railing. "You actually came." "I said I would. Most people say plenty." Walter descended the steps and handed Lily a jar of honey from the farm's last spring harvest. She thanked him, then wandered toward the fence to inspect a chestnut mare grazing under the cottonwoods. The air smelled of cut hay, warm soil, and motor oil drifting from the open equipment shed. Ethan remained near his truck, one hand resting over the blue, beaded bracelet Lily had made him. "This is already more than enough," he said when Walter gestured toward the porch table. "It isn't payment," Walter replied. "It's supper." Before Ethan could answer, a dark gray SUV rolled across the cattle guard. Its polished body looked almost unreal against the weathered barn and rust-red tractor. The driver's door opened, and a woman stepped out carrying rolled site plans beneath one arm. Her cream blouse was crisp despite the heat, her boots clean enough to show she had not crossed many muddy fields lately. Walter straightened. For the first time, the old farmer appeared uncertain. "Claire," he called, "come meet someone." She stopped beside the porch, her gaze moving from Walter to Ethan's faded work shirt, then to the pickup with a primer gray fender. Walter placed a hand on the railing between them. "Claire, this is Ethan. He's the man I told you about." The words carried more weight than a roadside favor required. "My daughter," Walter continued. "She's an architect. Came back from Chicago this morning." Claire offered her hand first. "Dad said you rescued his afternoon. Your father did most of the work." "That isn't how he tells it." Her handshake was firm, her palm cool from the SUV's air conditioning. Ethan's fingers bore thin black lines no soap had managed to lift from the creases. Claire noticed the blue bracelet at his wrist, then glanced toward Lily at the fence. "Your daughter." "Lily. She made that." Ethan turned the beads once beneath his thumb. "Said every mechanic needs something that can't be fixed with a wrench." A small laugh escaped Claire before she could restrain it. Walter watched both of them over the rim of his glass. Then the rolled plans beneath Claire's arm shifted, revealing a glossy real estate folder stamped with the image of a luxury development. Ethan's eyes moved toward the farmhouse, the barn, and the fields fading gold beyond them. "You're renovating?" he asked. Claire's smile thinned. "Selling. If everything goes through, this place will be transferred before fall." Walter looked toward the pasture instead of at his daughter. The porch boards creaked beneath the changing weight of 3 adults standing inside 3 very different futures. Lily returned carrying a fallen horseshoe, dust coating her fingertips. "Mr. Walter says this farm has been here forever." "Not forever," Claire said quietly. "Just longer than it should have been my father's burden." Ethan caught the quick tightening of Walter's jaw, but he offered no judgment. His phone vibrated. A bank notice glowed across the screen. "Final review, garage loan." He silenced it before anyone could read more. Though Claire had already seen the cracked glass, the grease beneath his nails, and the practiced care with which he concealed bad news from Lily. "You own a shop?" she asked. "For now." The 2 words landed softly, stripped of self-pity. Claire lowered the plans. Her successful career had brought her home with a signed path towards selling the land. His failing garage had not kept him from giving away an hour he could not afford. Walter stepped between them and opened the screen door. "Supper first. Business can wait." Claire did not move. Instead, she looked past Ethan toward the narrow wooden bridge spanning the creek at the edge of the property, then made a choice of her own. "Come back tomorrow afternoon," she said. "Before I sign anything, I want a working man's opinion about one part of this farm." A steel chain rattled across the bridge planks as the county inspector pulled it tight between 2 orange barricades. Beneath the weathered boards, creek water hissed over limestone, carrying the cold smell of mud into the afternoon heat. "Closed until further notice." "We're signing the sale this week," Claire said. "Then your buyer has a problem," the inspector replied. He tapped the red notice stapled to the railing and drove away. leaving dust suspended above the gravel road. Ethan crouched near the first support beam, while Walter watched from beside his old Ford. Claire stood over Ethan with rolled plans beneath one arm, the polish of her Chicago shoes dulled by pale farm dust. "Can it be reinforced?" she asked. "Maybe. Can you inspect it? I can tell you what the wood is doing. I can't replace the county." Ethan ran his thumb along a split in the timber. The surface felt sun-dried and firm, but his pocketknife sank deep near the bolt. Damp fibers peeled away, dark and soft, releasing the sour odor of rot. He moved beneath the railing, measured the sag with a length of string, then struck 3 supports with a small hammer. 2 answered with a clean knock. The third gave a hollow thud. Claire unrolled the renovation drawings across the hood of her SUV. Paper snapped in the creek wind as Ethan wiped his hands and studied the stamped sheets. New decking, new guardrails, cosmetic cladding around the original supports. His finger stopped at the load table. "Who approved these?" "My firm did." "You signed them?" "I reviewed the design package." Ethan placed the rottenwood shaving beside her signature. "Then your package missed the center pier." Claire's jaw tightened. "The survey rated it serviceable." "The survey checked what could be seen. And you've had 10 minutes. 10 minutes was enough to find water trapped behind that steel plate." Sunlight flashed along the galvanized cover bolted around the support. Ethan removed one loose fastener and pulled the plate outward. Brown water streamed onto his boots. Behind it, the timber had collapsed into black pulp around a rusted bolt, hidden beneath the very reinforcement specified on the plan. The bridge creaked when Walter shifted his weight near the barricade. Ethan raised one hand without looking back. "Stay off it." Walter obeyed. Claire did not speak. Cicadas buzzed in the cottonwoods, and somewhere beyond the barn, Lily laughed as she chased a yellow butterfly with Walter's honey jar tucked safely beneath her arm. The small, ordinary sound made the silence by the creek feel heavier. Claire examined the exposed cavity, then traced the drawing with one clean fingernail. If this report is wrong, the closing stops. If it's right and you ignore it, someone eventually drives onto a bridge that cannot carry them. "You think I would risk that?" Ethan met her gaze. "I think you trusted a stamp more than the structure." The words landed without heat, which made them harder to dismiss. Claire folded her arms. "Your garage is under final loan review. You need work." "I do. And you're still challenging the person offering it." Ethan set the loose bolt on the plans. It rolled across her firm seal and stopped against her signature. "You asked for my judgment, not my agreement." Claire stared at the bolt, then removed her phone. For a moment, Ethan expected her to call the buyer. Instead, she photographed the damage, the trapped water, and every marked dimension. She emailed the images to herself, copied the county inspector, and folded the plans under her arm. "Come back at 8 tomorrow morning," she said. "Bring every tool you need to prove this." Ethan glanced toward the chained bridge, then toward Walter's farmhouse on the far side. "And if I do?" Claire held up the plan bearing her own approval. "Then one of us is going to lose more than a sale." Cold morning light slid across the farmhouse table, catching on a county inspection form and the silver clip of a black fountain pen. The kitchen smelled of coffee, damp wool, and old pine warmed by the stove. Ethan stood beside Claire while a man in a charcoal overcoat placed a certified bank draft over the report. $28,000, the buyer's representative said. "Your inspection invoice, plus a consulting fee." "For what?" Ethan asked. "For confirming the bridge can remain open under restricted use." "It can't." The man tapped the unsigned line. "Your garage enters foreclosure Friday. This clears the loan today." Beyond the window, wind moved through the bare orchard. A loose gutter clicked against the eaves, steady as a clock. Ethan stared at the amount. It would keep his tools in their drawers, his name above the garage, and Lily's drawings taped beside the office phone. The bank's final notice rested folded in his shirt pocket, its edge pressing against his chest. Walter remained near the stove, silent, both hands wrapped around a chipped mug. He did not interfere. The same man Ethan had helped beside the road now watched him face a burden no wooden crate could equal. "Sign," the representative said. "Get paid." Call it restricted access. Save your business. Ethan took the fountain pen. Claire's breath stopped for half a beat. Then he drew the inspection form toward himself and wrote across the signature field in firm block letters. Unsafe. Certification refused. The pen scratched loudly in the quiet kitchen. He set it down beside the untouched draft. My daughter believes my hands fix things, he said. I won't use them to hide what's broken. The representative's jaw tightened. Then your garage is not our concern. It never was. Ethan pushed the draft back. Walter lowered his eyes to the steam rising from his coffee, but his weathered fingers tightened around the mug. Claire picked up the rejected form. Her firm's embossed name gleamed beneath Ethan's refusal, binding his judgment to her approval of the failed plans. She walked to the window, unlocked her phone, and opened the project dashboard. What are you doing? The representative asked. Stopping the sale review. You don't have authority to suspend the entire project. Claire turned the screen toward him. I'm the architect of record. I have the duty. Her thumb struck the red command. Project suspended. External audit requested. County notified. The phone chimed 3 times, each alert sharp against the ticking gutter. Then came the calls. Her managing partner. The buyer. The legal department. Claire rejected the first, answered the second, and placed it on speaker. Withdraw the suspension, a clipped voice ordered. Not until every approval is audited. Your name is on those plans. That is why I'm doing it publicly. If the defect is confirmed, the firm will hold you responsible. Claire looked at Ethan's grease-darkened cuffs, then at Walter beside the stove. Send me that in writing. She ended the call before the reply came. Outside, red county lights flashed across the wet bridge rails as another barricade was installed. The sale was frozen. Ethan's garage was still headed toward foreclosure, and Claire's license and career now stood beneath the same cold scrutiny as her signature. Walter crossed the kitchen and quietly retrieved the rejected bank draft. He folded it once, not to offer it again, but to place it inside his coat. Before anyone could speak, Claire's phone lit with a final notice from her firm. An emergency board hearing had been scheduled for 48 hours later. She read it once, then slid Ethan's refusal form into her portfolio. They'll try to make one of us carry this alone, she said. Ethan looked through the window at the chained bridge. Claire closed the portfolio with a hard snap. They have 48 hours to prove the truth belongs to only one of us. Rain tapped the office windows while the printer fed out page after page with a dry mechanical rasp. By sunrise, Claire had covered Walter's dining table with contracts, survey revisions, and permit records, their paper edges curling in the damp farmhouse air. Ethan stood across from her in his worn mechanic's shirt as she aligned 2 versions of the same bridge plan beneath a brass lamp. One bore her digital approval. The other, submitted 3 days later, replaced her drainage specifications with decorative steel sleeves around the center pier. Same project number, Ethan said. Different load notes. And a copied signature, Claire replied. She pulled up the document history from her firm's remote archive. The buyer's development partner had altered the file after approval, then renamed the revision as a clerical correction. Attached to it was a private site plan, 84 luxury cabins, a spa, and a gated entrance drawn directly across Walter's lower pasture. The farm sale had never been about preserving the land. It was the first piece of a resort. Walter rested both hands on the back of a kitchen chair. The old wood creaked beneath his grip. Did you know? No. Claire's voice stayed level, but she removed her company access card and placed it beside the forged plan. I do now. At 8:12, her attorney called. Do not send those files. They altered sealed documents. The board can contain it. Contain the fraud? Protect your license. A gust pressed rain against the glass. The room smelled of coffee, wet soil, and printer toner. Claire looked at Ethan's grease-darkened hands, the same hands that had refused enough money to save his garage. Then she attached the original plans, the altered revision, and the resort proposal to a sworn statement. Claire, the attorney warned, once you transmit that, the firm cannot protect you. That's the point. She sent the packet to the county inspector, the state licensing board, and the external auditor. 3 confirmation tones sounded. Quiet. Final. By noon, the buyer's development permit had been suspended, and the external audit no longer centered on Claire's signature. The altered records now pointed toward the partner who had engineered the sale. But Claire did not stop there. She rolled fresh tracing paper across Walter's table and began sketching while Ethan called out the bridge's actual dimensions. 32 feet between stable supports, a 6-inch sag at center, 2 sound outer beams, 1 rotted pier. Instead of replacing the entire bridge, she designed a temporary bypass truss using locally milled timber, bolted steel plates, and cribbing that could be assembled from the creek bank without loading the damaged span. Ethan checked each joint with a mechanic's ruler, then shifted one brace 2 inches. That clears the drainage channel. Claire redrew the connection. And cuts excavation. Their work moved without ceremony. Pencil, measurement, correction, until afternoon light turned the wet field silver. The estimate came to less than 1/5 of the buyer's proposed replacement, and the county inspector approved it for emergency review. Walter studied the finished plan, then Claire's discarded access card. Your mother used to say a house tells you what it can bear. Claire capped her pen. So do people. A low rumble rolled over the pasture. Ethan crossed to the window as water gathered in the ruts beside his truck. The county inspector's message arrived seconds later. A major storm cell had shifted toward the valley, and the creek could overtop the closed road before midnight. Claire's design could save the bridge approach, but only if they found the steel plates, heavy bolts, and bracing hardware within 6 hours. Ethan stared at the materials list. Every required piece had an exact match somewhere else, in the restored truck waiting inside his garage for final delivery. Claire saw the recognition in his face. Where can we get them? Thunder shook the window pane. Ethan folded the plan once and reached for his keys. I know where they are. Thunder chased the old pickup down the valley as rain hammered the windshield hard enough to blur the yellow centerline. Inside Ethan's garage, fluorescent tubes buzzed above the restored truck, their cold light sliding across flawless chrome, deep blue paint, and the polished steel hardware beneath its chassis. The air smelled of motor oil, wet concrete, and fresh leather. Ethan unlocked the tool cabinet. Claire hurried in behind him, rain dripping from her coat. Tell me there's another source. Not before midnight. Then we changed the design. Ethan placed the materials list on the hood. The creek won't wait for another design. He looked at the truck, the final restoration on his books, the contract meant to carry the garage through another month. Then he opened the passenger door and removed a folded drawing taped beside the glove box. Purple crayon covered most of it. Ethan beneath a crooked garage sign, Lily beside him, and 6 uneven words across the top. Dad fixes things the right way. His thumb rested on the paper's softened edge. Outside, wind shoved rain beneath the bay door, spreading a dark ribbon across the floor. A county alert sounded from Claire's phone. Water had reached the lower approach, and emergency crews could not bring heavy equipment across the closed bridge. Ethan folded Lily's drawing and placed it in his shirt pocket. Bring the impact wrench. Claire studied the truck. If we strip those parts, can you replace them? Not in time for delivery. You'll lose the contract. Yes. And the bank. The compressor clicked off, leaving only rain on the metal roof. Ethan slid beneath the chassis on a mechanic's creeper. Start with the half-inch sockets. Bolts screamed loose one after another. Ethan removed the reinforced mounting plates, cross braces, and custom-fitted hardware that had taken him months to source. Claire labeled each piece according to her repair plan, then loaded them into Walter's old truck as Ethan worked. This time, she did not argue with his judgment. She followed his measurements, checked every count, and carried the heaviest steel plate through ankle-deep runoff without asking him to take it. By the time the restored truck stood incomplete on its lift, its empty mounting points looked like missing teeth. Ethan's delivery invoice lay on the workbench beneath a dripping roof seam. He turned it over, wrote contract forfeited, and signed his name. At the bridge, the creek roared brown and violent beneath the boards. Cold rain stung their faces while Walter held work lights on the bank. Ethan anchored the salvaged plates across the weakened center section. Claire directed the brace angles and drainage cuts, calling measurements over the wind. 32 inches. Locked. Second brace. Ready. Mud pulled at Ethan's boots as he drove the final bolt home. The temporary truss settled, shuddered, then held. Water passed beneath it instead of striking the rotted pier. The county inspector crossed on foot, tested each connection, and raised one gloved hand. Emergency access approved. Walter's farmhouse was no longer cut off. But when Ethan returned to the garage near dawn, a tow rig was waiting beside the bay. The restoration client had canceled, and the bank's foreclosure notice had been taped to the glass. Ethan stood beneath the failing fluorescent light, Lily's drawing pressed inside his wet shirt, as the restored truck rolled away in pieces. Then Walter stepped through the open door, carrying the rejected bank draft in one hand and a weathered leather folder in the other. "You gave up the last thing keeping this place alive," the old man said quietly. "Now there's something about me, and about Claire, that you need to know." The leather folder landed on the workbench with a soft, heavy slap, stirring the smell of wet steel and old motor oil. Rain ticked against the garage door while the foreclosure notice fluttered on the glass. Ethan looked from the folder to Walter, but the old farmer pushed the rejected bank draft aside. "That money was never mine to give you." "Then whose was it?" "The buyer's." Walter loosened the folder's cracked strap and spread several documents beneath the fluorescent light: incorporation papers, land deeds, and a faded photograph of the farm surrounded by hundreds of acres before subdivisions reached the valley. His work-worn finger stopped on a company seal Ethan recognized from Claire's plans. Walter had founded the development firm now trying to purchase his land. Decades earlier, he had turned a small construction crew into one of the state's largest privately held building companies, then transferred control to outside partners after his wife died. Claire was not merely an architect employed by that firm. She was Walter's daughter, its chief design officer, and the legal heir to the founder's remaining shares. "Why dress like you can barely keep that truck running?" Ethan asked. Walter glanced toward the empty bay where the restored vehicle had stood. "Because a man learns more carrying his own boxes than sitting behind tinted glass." The lights buzzed overhead. Cold water dripped from Ethan's sleeves onto the concrete, each drop darkening the gray floor. Walter slid the bank draft toward him, and Ethan finally saw the buyer's corporate account printed across the top. The bribe had been authorized by the same partners who had altered Claire's specifications. Walter had kept it because Ethan's refusal was proof, not of engineering fraud, but of the pressure used to secure it. Tires hissed across the rain-soaked lot. Claire entered carrying a county evidence envelope, her boots leaving muddy crescents behind her. She stopped when she saw the documents spread across the bench. "You told him." "He earned the truth," Walter replied. Claire removed her damp coat and placed her company identification beside the founder's papers. The matching seal caught the pale morning light. "My shares could block the sale," she said, "but only if I keep them." Walter's jaw tightened. "And the partners know that." Claire opened the evidence envelope, added a copy of the rejected draft, and sealed it with a strip of red tamper tape. Then she signed across the seam and handed it to Walter for delivery to the county investigator. That single motion changed the draft from temptation into evidence. "Once this is filed," Walter warned, "they'll freeze your voting rights and challenge your inheritance." "Let them. Your firm may abandon you." "Then it was never protecting my work." Ethan touched the foreclosure notice through the glass. "You could lose the company." Claire looked at the stripped truck parts scattered beside Lily's grease-smudged drawing. "You already lost what you had to save a bridge my name helped endanger." Walter closed the folder, but kept one document outside it. A certificate showing Claire's inherited stake was large enough to stop the resort project or destroy her place in the company. By 9 o'clock, the county investigator had accepted the sealed envelope, and an emergency town council hearing had been called for that afternoon. Walter turned to Claire beneath the weak fluorescent glow. "If you testify, they'll offer you one choice: your inheritance or the farm." Claire picked up the certificate. "Then they'll hear my answer in public." The old man faced Ethan next, his palm resting on the scarred workbench. "And when they ask why an honest mechanic should matter in a fight between people with millions, I want you standing beside my daughter." Rainwater ticked from the courthouse gutters as the council chamber filled with wet coats, murmuring voices, and the bitter smell of burnt coffee. Fluorescent light gleamed across the inheritance certificate in Claire's hand, while Ethan stood beside Walter in a clean work shirt that still carried rust beneath the cuffs. "Ms. Claire, your evidence has been accepted," the council chair said. "But your inherited shares give you the power to stop this development privately." "Why bring it here?" "Because silence would protect the same people who corrupted it." "And what will that cost you?" Claire placed the certificate beneath the microphone. The paper made almost no sound, yet every whisper in the chamber died. Her attorney leaned close, voice low and urgent. "Once you surrender those shares, the company may withdraw its defense of your license. You cannot reverse this." Claire looked toward Walter. The old man did not nod or speak. His weathered fingers simply loosened around the brim of his hat. Then she looked at Ethan, the mechanic who had lost his best contract rather than let a bridge fail beneath somebody else's family. "File it," she said. Her attorney hesitated. Claire slid a signed relinquishment across the oak table herself. "I surrender my inheritance in the development partnership, along with every voting right attached to it. Enter the evidence into public record and preserve the farm under the community land petition." The clerk stamped the document. Once, twice, 3 times. Each impact echoed against the high ceiling like a door locking behind her. Across the aisle, the buyer's representative rose sharply. "Without those shares, she has no standing to interfere." The council chair lifted the sealed draft Ethan had refused. "She no longer needs private standing. The county now has evidence of coercion, falsified plans, and attempted bribery." The development permit was suspended indefinitely, and the preservation petition moved forward under emergency protection. Power had changed hands, not through wealth, but through surrender. Outside the chamber, afternoon light pushed through thinning clouds and turned the wet courthouse steps silver. Walter stopped Ethan beneath the stone archway and opened his checkbook. "The bridge saved my land," he said. "Name what the garage costs." Ethan glanced at the blank check, then at the grease-dark half-moons beneath his fingernails. "I won't trade one favor for another. This isn't a bribe." "I know." Walter held the pen still. Ethan took a folded proposal from his pocket instead. Its edges were soft from being carried through the storm. "Give me a fair bid. That's all." Walter unfolded it. The plan would convert the endangered garage into a training shop for single parents, paid apprenticeships, evening certification classes, and repair work for county vehicles. No gift, no rescue. A second chance built to serve more than one man. Claire stepped beneath the archway, her inheritance certificate gone from her hands. "The county needs vendors for the bridge restoration," she said. "Your shop will have to compete." Ethan met her eyes, then judged the work. Walter closed the checkbook and studied the proposal as church bells marked the hour beyond the square. "A fair bid," he agreed. "But tomorrow, both of you are coming back to the farm." Ethan glanced toward Claire. "Why?" Walter tucked the proposal inside his coat, a quiet smile forming beneath his gray mustache. "Because I introduced you as my daughter once. Tomorrow, I intend to tell you why I chose you to meet her." Morning sunlight poured through the farm kitchen windows, warming the pine table while an old percolator clicked and filled the room with the smell of dark coffee. On the porch, wet fields glittered beyond the repaired bridge, and truck tires hummed steadily across its temporary truss. Ethan entered beside Claire and found Walter arranging 3 envelopes beneath a framed photograph of the farm. "Sit down. Is this about the bid?" "It's about the introduction." Walter slid the first envelope toward Ethan. Inside was the county's public request for proposals, carrying the same requirements every bidder would receive. The second held no check, only a signed commitment from Walter to enroll the farm's vehicles in the training shop if Ethan won fairly. "No favors," Walter said. "No favors," Ethan agreed. Claire remained standing, her fingers brushing the rough grain of the chair. Without corporate shares, inherited votes, or the protection she had surrendered, she looked different in the clean morning light. Not smaller, but unhidden. Walter turned to her. "Tell him." Claire placed the third envelope beside Ethan's scarred hands. It contained her independent architectural seal, a modest business registration, and a completed application to serve as an unpaid technical advisor on his bid. "The county requires a licensed consultant," she said. "I can help design the classrooms and inspection bays. You keep control of the shop." Ethan studied the documents. "Your name could make them think I'm being carried." "Then don't use my name to win." Her voice stayed quiet. "Use my work." Outside, a wrench rang against steel as a county crew inspected the bridge. The sharp note traveled across the yard and faded into birdsong. Ethan closed the envelope but did not push it away. "One condition." Claire lifted her chin. "I judge your work too." A smile touched the corner of her mouth. "Fair enough." Walter eased into his chair, the leather folder resting unopened by his elbow. Years ago, Claire learned to measure buildings before she learned to measure people. "You learned the opposite way." He nodded toward the road where Ethan had first lifted those heavy wooden crates without asking what they were worth. "I could have hired a crew that day. I wanted to know who would stop when there was nothing to gain." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You tested me?" "I watched you," Walter corrected. "Then I introduced my daughter to a man who would tell her the truth even when it cost him everything. And I introduced you to a woman strong enough to act on it." The room went still except for the soft scrape of Claire pulling out the chair beside Ethan. Walter had not arranged a rescue, a reward, or a debt. He had placed two honest people within reach of one another, then stepped back to see whether dignity would recognize dignity. Weeks later, Ethan submitted the bid with Claire's calculations attached, and every cost exposed down to the final bolt. The council awarded his garage the contract on merit. Beneath Lily's grease-smudged drawing, the first 6 single parents signed their apprenticeship papers while welding sparks flashed blue against the shop windows. Walter arrived carrying a wooden crate, and this time Ethan let him take one end. Claire crossed the floor with 2 hard hats and handed one to Ethan. "Partners?" she asked. Ethan looked from her seal on the plans to the open bays filled with new voices, then fastened the strap beneath his chin. "Partners." Walter's first introduction had given Ethan a name. His last had given 2 people the courage to choose each other without debt, disguise, or rescue. And that was the one gift no fortune could buy.